The cargo ship Wandering Star was dying. Captain Daniel Harris stood on the bridge and watched the warning lights flash red across every console. The micrometeorite had punched through their engine core 3 hours ago. Now they drifted in the empty space between stars with no power and no hope. The air was getting thin. Daniel could feel it in his lungs with every breath. The carbon dioxide scrubbers had failed an hour ago. His crew of 42 people were scattered throughout the ship, trying to stay calm, trying to breathe slowly, trying not to think about what was coming. Lieutenant Maya Collins climbed up to the bridge using the emergency ladder. The elevators had stopped working long ago. She was young, only 26 years old, and she had joined the crew just 6 months before. Daniel remembered how excited she had been on her first day. Now her face was pale and her hands were shaking. "Captain, the medical bay reports 7 people have already passed out from lack of oxygen," she said. Her voice was quiet. "Dr. Stevens says they have maybe 2 hours before brain damage starts." Daniel nodded slowly. He had already done the math in his head. They had sent out distress signals on every frequency. They had tried to repair the engines. They had done everything they could do. But the nearest human colony was 4 days away at maximum speed. Help would not arrive in time. "Tell everyone to gather in the cargo hold," Daniel said. "It is the largest space on the ship. We will share what air we have left and stay together at the end." Maya wiped her eyes and turned to leave. Then she stopped. Through the viewport, something was moving in the darkness of space. "Captain," she whispered. "What is that?" Daniel looked up and felt his heart stop. A ship was approaching them, but it was not like any ship he had ever seen. It was made of crystals that caught the light of distant stars and broke it into 1,000 colors. It moved through space like it was swimming through water, graceful and slow and impossibly beautiful. "Unknown vessel," Daniel said into the communication system. His voice was rough from the bad air. "This is Captain Daniel Harris of the human cargo ship Wandering Star. We are in distress. Our engines are destroyed and our air is running out. Can you help us?" There was silence for a long moment. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was strange and musical, like wind chimes in a summer breeze. The words were broken and hard to understand, but the meaning was clear. "We hear you, humans. We are coming." The crystalline ship moved closer. Daniel watched it approach with a mix of fear and hope. Humanity had spread across 17 star systems in the past 200 years. They had found evidence of other intelligent species, old ruins on dead worlds, strange signals from distant galaxies. But they had never made contact with living aliens before, until now. The alien ship touched the hull of the Wandering Star. There was no crash or impact. The crystals simply melded with the metal like water soaking into cloth. Then something strange began to happen. The emergency lights flickered and grew brighter. The air vents started to hum. Fresh oxygen began to flow through the ship. Maya fell to her knees, gasping in deep breaths of clean air. Tears streamed down her face. All across the ship, crew members who had been lying down, too weak to move, started to sit up and breathe. Then the door to the bridge opened. The alien that stepped through was like nothing Daniel had ever imagined. It was tall, nearly 7 feet, and its body was made entirely of living crystal. Light moved through it in waves of color, blue and green and gold. It had no face that Daniel could recognize, but somehow he knew it was looking at him. "I am called Singing Crystal of Morning Tides," the alien said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating through the air itself. "My people are the Valori. We found your ship by chance during our migration. We have repaired your air systems and are now working on your engines." Daniel tried to speak but could not find words. He had been prepared to die. He had said goodbye to his wife in his mind. He had made peace with never seeing his daughter again. And now this stranger, this impossible beautiful stranger, was saving his life. Why? He finally managed to ask. You do not know us. We have nothing to give you. Why are you helping us? The Valori tilted its crystalline head. Light rippled through its body in patterns that might have been confusion or amusement. You were dying, it said simply. We could help. What other choice was there? Daniel felt something break inside his chest. Not a bad break. Something like a wall falling down. He had spent his whole life in space, trading goods between colonies, dealing with pirates and corrupt officials and people who always wanted something in return. He had learned to be careful. He had learned to protect himself. He had learned that nothing in the universe was free, and now an alien was saving his entire crew simply because it was the right thing to do. The lorry stayed for 11 hours. They worked without rest, repairing the wandering star with technology that seemed like magic to human eyes. They fixed the engines. They healed the 7 crew members who had fallen into oxygen-starved comas. They even restocked the food supplies with strange crystalline fruits that tasted like honey and sunlight. When the work was done, Singing Crystal of Morning Tides returned to the bridge one last time. Your ship is repaired, it said. You should be able to reach your home without further trouble. We must continue our migration now. Our people have traveled the stars for 100,000 of your years. We cannot stop for long. Daniel stood up and walked toward the alien. He did not know the right way to show gratitude to a being made of living crystal. So he simply bowed his head. Thank you, he said. Thank you for everything. I do not know how we can ever repay you. The Valori reached out with one crystalline limb and touched Daniel's shoulder. The touch was warm and gentle. There is no debt, it said. There is only kindness passed from one being to another. Perhaps one day you will find someone who needs help. Perhaps you will remember this moment and choose to help them. That is enough. That is all we ask. The Valori left as quietly as they had come. Their crystalline ship separated from the wandering star and drifted away into the darkness between stars. Daniel watched them go until they were just a sparkle of light in the distance. Maya stood beside him. She was still crying, but she was smiling too. Do you think we will ever see them again? She asked. Daniel shook his head slowly. I do not know, but I know this. I will never forget what they did for us. And if I ever have a chance to repay that kindness, I will take it, no matter what it costs. He filed his report with Earth Command that same day. The story of the Valori spread across all of human space within a week. People talked about it in bars and schools and government buildings. They talked about the aliens who saved 42 human lives and asked for nothing in return. Humanity did not forget. 18 years passed since the rescue of the wandering star. The story had become famous across all of human space. Children learned about the Valori in school. Scientists studied the little information they had about the crystalline aliens. Poets wrote songs about the kindness of strangers in the dark between stars, but the Valori themselves had vanished. They continued their endless migration through the galaxy, following paths they had traveled for 100,000 years. No human ship ever crossed their route again. Some people began to wonder if the whole thing had been a dream, thought it was not a dream. The Valori were very real, and they were about to face the greatest danger in their long history. The Korthax Dominion controlled over 200 star systems in the far reaches of the galaxy. They were conquerors. They were slavers. They were monsters who saw other species not as people, but as resources to be used and thrown away. In their long history of conquest, they had destroyed over 60 civilizations and enslaved billions of beings. When their scout ships found the Valori migration fleet, they could not believe their luck. The Valori had no weapons. They had never needed them. For 100,000 years, they had traveled peacefully through space. Most species they met were friendly or simply left them alone. The concept of war was so strange to them that they had no word for it in their language. The Korthax did not care about any of that. They saw the beautiful crystalline ships and the gentle beings inside them. They learned that Velori bodies could be processed into powerful energy sources. And they decided to take everything. The first attack came without warning. A Velori elder named Flowing Light of Evening Songs was teaching a group of young ones about the history of their migration when the sky outside their ship turned to fire. Korthax weapons tore through the crystalline hull like paper. Emergency alerts filled the air. Screams echoed through the corridors. 300 Velori ships were destroyed in the first hour. Over 2 million beings died without even understanding what was happening to them. They had never seen violence on this scale. They had never imagined that any species could be so cruel. The survivors scattered in all directions. They ran because running was all they knew how to do. But the Korthax were patient hunters. They tracked down the fleeing ships one by one, destroying some and capturing others. The captured Velori were taken to prison worlds where they would be slowly harvested for their crystalline bodies. Singing Crystal of Morning Tides was on. One of those captured ships, the Velori, who had saved the Wandering Star 18 years ago, was now an elder of its people. It had spent the years since the rescue teaching young ones about kindness and compassion. It had often thought about the humans it had helped, wondering if they had lived good lives, wondering if they had passed on the gift of kindness to others. Now it was in chains made of dark metal, being dragged through the corridors of a Korthax prison ship. Around it, thousands of other Velori stumbled forward, their crystalline bodies dull and cracked from the violence they had suffered. The prison world was called Varth 9. It was a dark place, a rocky planet with no sun of its own, lit only by the glow of Korthax industry. The Velori were taken to massive underground facilities where the harvesting would begin. The process was horrific. Korthax machines would slowly break down the crystalline bodies of living Velori, extracting the energy stored within. The victims stayed alive through most of the process, aware of what was happening to them, unable to stop it. A single Velori could be harvested over the course of several months before finally dying. Mourning, Tides watched as friends and family were taken away one by one. It heard their cries of pain echoing through the metal corridors. It felt its own body growing weaker as the Korthax began to harvest it too. And it wondered if anyone in the universe even knew what was happening to its people far away. In the outer reaches of human space, a small listening post on the colony world of New Montana picked up a strange signal. It was weak, barely strong enough to register on their sensors. It had traveled across thousands of light years, losing strength with every passing moment. Communications. Officer Amy Peters was working the night shift when the signal came in. She was tired and thinking about going home to see her family. But something about this signal made her stop and pay attention. It was not in any human language. It was musical and strange, full of harmonics that no human voice could produce. Amy ran it through every translation program she had. Most of them failed completely. But one old program, created 18 years ago to analyze data from the Wandering Star incident, managed to pull out a few words. The message was in crude human standard, clearly learned in a hurry by beings who had never spoken it before. The words were simple and desperate. "We helped you once. Please, we are dying." Amy felt her blood turn cold. She had grown up hearing stories about the Velori. Her grandmother had worked in the government office that processed Captain Harris's report. The story of the rescue had been her favorite bedtime tale as a child. And now, the Velori were calling for help. Amy sent the message up the chain of command immediately. Within an hour, it had reached the planetary governor. Within 3 hours, it had reached the military command of the outer colonies. Within 6 hours, it was on the desk of the president of the United Human Federation on Earth itself. The president was a woman named Catherine Moore. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. She had spent her career trying to make humanity better, trying to build a civilization worthy of the stars. When she read the message from the Valori, she sat in silence for a long time. Then she called an emergency meeting of the Federation Council. 18 years ago, she said to the assembled leaders, an alien species saved 42 of our people. They asked for nothing in return. They simply helped because they could. Now those same beings are being slaughtered by an empire of slavers. They have called out to us for help. One of the counselors raised his hand. Madam President, we know nothing about this Cortex Dominion. We do not know how powerful they are. We could be starting a war we cannot win. President Moore nodded slowly. That is true. We could be walking into a trap. We could lose ships and soldiers. We could fail. She paused and looked around the room. But we could also succeed. We could save the beings who saved us. We could prove that humanity remembers its debts. She stood up and placed her hands on the table. I will not force anyone to support this mission. But I will tell you this. If we turn away now, if we ignore the cries of beings who showed us kindness when we needed it most, then we do not deserve to call ourselves human. We do not deserve the stars. The vote was unanimous. The United Human Federation would go to war for the VEL or II. Within 12 hours. The largest military operation in human history began. Admiral Patricia Cole had served in the human fleet for 35 years. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belts. She had protected colony ships from raiders. She had commanded more combat missions than she could count. But she had never seen anything like this. Ships were gathering at the rally point near Tau Ceti. They came from every corner of human space. Battleships and cruisers, destroyers and frigates, carriers loaded with fighter craft. They came from Earth and Mars, from the outer colonies and the frontier worlds. They came because humanity had been called to answer a debt. Patricia stood on the bridge of her flagship, the battleship Relentless, and watched the fleet assemble. Her executive officer, Commander Nathan Brooks, stood beside her with a datapad in his hands. Admiral, we now have 417 combat vessels, he said. Another 50 civilian ships have volunteered for transport and medical duties. More are arriving every hour. Patricia nodded slowly. It is not just the military answering the call. No, Admiral. Cargo ship captains are offering their vessels to carry refugees. Medical organizations are sending doctors and nurses. Engineers who studied the data from the Wandering Star incident are volunteering their expertise. Everyone wants to help. Patricia felt something warm in her chest. Pride, perhaps. Or hope. She had spent her career protecting humanity from external threats. But she had sometimes wondered if humans were worth protecting. They could be selfish and cruel. They fought over land and resources. They hurt each other in 1,000 small ways every day. But now, when it mattered most, they were coming together. They were risking their lives for beings they had never met, simply because those beings had once shown kindness to strangers. Maybe humans were worth protecting after all. The destroyer, Steadfast, arrived at the rally point on the third day of the gathering. Its commander was Lucas Webb, a man of 44 years with gray at his temples and scars on his hands. He had been a young ensign on the Wandering Star 18 years ago. He was one of the 7 who had nearly died before the Valori saved them. Lucas had spent his entire career waiting for this moment. His executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Kate Morrison, found him standing at the viewport of the observation deck. He was staring out at the assembled fleet with tears in his eyes. Commander?" she said softly. "Is everything all right?" Lucas turned to face her. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and smiled. "I was 26 years old when the Valori saved my life," he said. "I remember lying on the deck of the Wandering Star, unable to breathe, knowing I was going to die. And then they came. These beautiful, impossible beings made of light and crystal. They pulled me back from death and asked for nothing in return." He looked back out at the fleet. "I have thought about that moment every day for 18 years. I have wondered what I could do to repay them. And now I finally have my answer." He paused and took a deep breath. "I am going to help save them, even if it costs me my life." Kate nodded slowly. She understood. She had heard the stories too. Everyone in human space had heard the stories. "Then let us make sure we bring them home," she said. Admiral Cole called all ship commanders to a final briefing before departure. Hundreds of faces appeared on the communication screens. Men and women from every colony, every background, every walk of life. They were farmers and scholars, soldiers and scientists, young and old. They were the best humanity had to offer. "In a few hours, we will depart for Korthak space," Patricia said. Her voice was calm and steady. "Our mission is called Returning Grace. Our objective is simple. We are going to find the Valori who were captured by the Korthak's dominion. We are going to free them, and we are going to bring them home." She paused and looked around at all the faces watching her. "I will not lie to you. This mission is dangerous. The Korthaks are a powerful enemy. They have conquered dozens of species and destroyed anyone who stood against them. Many of us may not survive this journey." No one spoke. No one looked away. "But I believe we will succeed," Patricia continued. "Not because we are stronger than the Korthaks. Not because we have better weapons or more ships. We will succeed because we are fighting for something that matters. We are fighting for kindness. We are fighting for gratitude. We are fighting to prove that when someone helps you, you do not forget." She straightened her shoulders and raised her chin. 18 years ago, the Valori saved 42 of our people. They asked nothing in return. They simply did what was right. Now it is our turn. We are going to save them. All of them. Every last one. The fleet departed from Tau Ceti on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. 417 combat vessels moved through space in perfect formation. Behind them came the civilian ships, the transports and hospital vessels, the supply carriers and rescue craft. Together they formed a river of light flowing through the darkness between stars. The journey to Korthak space would take 3 weeks at maximum speed. During that time, the crews trained and prepared. They studied everything humanity knew about the Korthaks, which was not much. They practiced rescue operations and medical procedures. They wrote letters to their families, just in case. On the Steadfast, Lucas Webb spent his nights looking at an old photograph. It showed the crew of the Wandering Star shortly after their rescue. 42 people standing together in the cargo hold, alive and grateful and filled with wonder. In the corner of the image, barely visible, was a shape of light and crystal. Singing crystal of morning tides, captured in the only photograph ever taken of a Valori by human eyes. "I am coming," Lucas whispered to the image. "Hold on a little longer. I am coming." Across the fleet, other voices whispered similar promises. They were coming for the Valori. They were coming to repay a debt that could never truly be repaid. They were coming because it was the right thing to do. 3 weeks later, the fleet reached the edge of Korthak space. The first enemy patrol detected them within hours. The Korthak's commander, a being called Crusher of Weak Things, sent a message demanding their immediate surrender. Admiral Cole's response was simple. "We are here for the Valori. Release them now, and we will leave in peace. Refuse, and we will take them by force." The Korthax laughed. They had conquered 60 species. They had never lost a war. What could these primitive humans do against the might of the Dominion? They were about to find out. The Korthax had never met a species like humanity before. They were used to conquering weak races. They were used to enemies who surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. They were used to victories that came easily and quickly. The humans were different. The first battle happened at the edge of the Varus system. The Korthax patrol fleet had 12 heavy cruisers and over 50 smaller vessels. Their commander was confident. He had destroyed entire civilizations with fewer ships. Admiral Cole did not wait for him to attack. She ordered a full fighter strike before the Korthax could even raise their shields. 300 human fighters screamed across the void of space. They were small and fast, piloted by men and women who had trained for years for moments like this. They carried missiles and energy weapons that tore through Korthax armor like knives through cloth. 3 Korthax cruisers were crippled in the first 30 seconds. 2 more followed within a minute. The Korthax commander tried to organize a counterattack, but the humans were everywhere at once. They darted between his ships, striking and retreating, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. What are these creatures? The Korthax commander screamed to his officers. Why do they not flee? But the humans did not flee. They pressed their attack even when their ships were damaged. They kept fighting even when they were outnumbered. One human pilot, a young woman named Jenny Park, rammed her crippled fighter directly into the bridge of a Korthax destroyer. Destroying both vessels in a ball of fire, she was the first human casualty of the war. She would not be the last. The battle for the Varus system lasted 6 days. On the second day, the destroyer Valiant was surrounded by 5 Korthax warships. Her captain, a man named Andrew Chun, ordered his crew to abandon ship while he stayed at the helm. He turned the Valiant directly toward the largest enemy vessel and activated the self-destruct sequence. The explosion destroyed the Valiant and 2 Korthax ships. It gave the damaged cruisers behind it enough time to escape. Andrew Chun was posthumously awarded the highest medal humanity could give. On the 3rd day, the carrier Indomitable lost half her fighter squadrons in a battle over the 4th planet. Her commander, Captain Lisa Wong, refused to retreat. She launched every remaining fighter and led them personally into the teeth of the Korthax defenses. On the 4th day, the battleship Relentless took a direct hit to her port engines. Fires burned through 3 decks. 60 crew members died in the first few minutes. Admiral Cole ordered emergency repairs and kept fighting. "We do not stop," she told her crew. "We do not rest. Not until every Valori is free." On the 5th day, the human fleet finally reached Vorath 9 itself. The prison world was heavily fortified. The Korthax had built massive weapons platforms in orbit and underground bunkers on the surface. They had thousands of soldiers protecting their investment. And they had something else. They had hostages. The Korthax commander sent a message to Admiral Cole. It showed images of Valori prisoners lined up in front of Korthax weapons. The message was clear. "Attack us, and they die." Cole stared at the images for a long moment. Then she turned to her communications officer. "Tell the ground forces to prepare for landing. We are going in." Marine Colonel Benjamin Price led the assault on the main prison complex. He was a big man with a scarred face and gentle eyes. He had volunteered for this mission the day he heard about it. His daughter was alive because a doctor had saved her from a childhood illness. That doctor had been inspired to become a healer after reading about the Valori rescue. Kindness, Benjamin knew, traveled in circles. The landing was brutal. Korthax weapons tore through the transport ships as they descended. Marine Private Tony Garcia was the first to die. His transport cut in half by enemy fire before it even reached the ground. He was 19 years old, But the humans kept coming. They landed on the rocky surface of Vareth 9 and immediately came under fire from all directions. Benjamin led his Marines forward, moving from cover to cover, losing soldiers with every step. The Korthax threw everything they had at them. It was not enough. The main gate of the prison complex was made of metal 10 feet thick. The combat engineers who were supposed to blow it open were all dead, killed in the landing. Benjamin looked at the gate, then looked at the demolition charges on his own belt. "Give me covering fire," he told his surviving soldiers. Then he ran out. The Korthax fired at him from every direction. Bullets and energy beams filled the air around him. Something hit his left arm, and he felt bones shatter. But he did not stop. He reached the gate, placed the charges, and threw himself to the side. The explosion blew the gate off its hinges. The Marines poured through the opening. Inside the prison complex, the conditions were worse than anyone had imagined. Thousands of Valori were held in tiny cells, their crystalline bodies cracked and dull. Many had already been partially harvested, their limbs removed and processed for energy. The survivors were weak, barely alive, and completely terrified that an elderly Valori approached Benjamin as he moved through the corridors. Its body was damaged so badly that it could barely stand. Light flickered weakly through its crystals, like a candle about to go out. "Who are you?" it asked through a translation device hanging around its neck. "Why are you here?" Benjamin knelt beside the dying alien. His broken arm screamed with pain, but he did not care. "We are humans," he said. 18 years ago, some of your people saved some of our people. A ship called the Wandering Star. You helped them when they were dying. You asked nothing in return." The Valori's crystals pulsed faintly. "I remember. The small ship with the failing air. We helped because we could." "Yes," Benjamin said. "You helped because you could. And now we are here because we can. We came to bring you home. All of you. Every last one." The Valori was silent for a long moment. Then something that might have been a sob passed through its crystalline body. "You came for us," it whispered. "All this way. All this death. For us. For every last one of you," Benjamin promised. "That is why we are here. That is why we will never stop fighting. Because you saved our people once. And we do not forget." The battle for the prison complex lasted another 12 hours. The Korthax fought desperately to keep their prisoners. They used the Valori as shields. They booby-trapped corridors. They called in reinforcements from across the system. But the humans would not be stopped by the time the sun rose on the 6th day. The prison complex was in human hands. 47,000 Valori survivors were being loaded onto transport ships. Medical teams worked around the clock to stabilize the injured. Marines who had been fighting for days, without sleep, carried weak and dying aliens on their backs. Among the survivors was singing. Crystal of Morning Tides, the being who had saved the Wandering Star, was barely alive. Nearly 30% of its crystalline body had been harvested. It should have been dead. But somehow, impossibly, it had held on. When the human medics found it, it opened its eyes and spoke a single word. "Why?" The medic who found it was a young man named Chris Johnson. He was only 23 years old, and he had cried when he saw what the Korthax had done to the prisoners. But he answered the question the same way his colonel had answered it. The same way every human would answer it. "Because you saved us once, and we never forgot." The extraction from Vareth 9 took 3 weeks. Human ships ferried Valori, survivors out of Korthax space, while the fleet held the line against wave after wave of enemy counterattacks. The Korthax Dominion, humiliated by their losses, had committed every available ship to destroying the human rescue force. Admiral Patricia Cole had expected this. She had planned for it. But planning and reality were very different things. On the 8th day of the extraction, the Korthax sent 50 warships against the human defensive line. The battle lasted 9 hours. 12 human ships were destroyed. 347 men and women died, defending transport vessels full of refugees, who did not even know their names. On the 12th day, the cruiser Horizon took a direct hit to her reactor core. Her captain ordered all hands to abandon ship, but the explosion came too quickly. Only 20 crew members survived out of 200. On the 15th day, Commander Lucas Webb stood on the bridge of the Steadfast and watched another transport ship full of Valori refugees jump to safety. His ship had been hit 6 times in the past week. Half his weapons were offline. A quarter of his crew were dead or wounded, but they were still fighting. "Commander," Kate Morrison said quietly, "we have lost contact with the destroyer Righteous." Last sensor readings showed her under attack by 3 Korthax cruisers. Lucas closed his eyes. Captain Howard of the Righteous had been his friend. They had served together for 15 years. Now Howard was gone, along with his entire crew. "How many survivors have we evacuated so far?" Lucas asked. 43,000 and counting, Kate replied. Lucas opened his eyes. 43,000 beings who would have died if humanity had not come for them. 43,000 lives saved by the sacrifice of ships like the Righteous and crews like Howard's. "Then we keep fighting," he said. "We keep fighting until every last one of them is safe." The final battle came at the Meridian Nebula. The Korthax Grand Fleet had finally arrived. 200 warships, including their largest battleships and their supreme military commander. They had come to crush the humans once and for all, to teach the galaxy what happened to those who defied the Dominion. Admiral Cole looked at the enemy fleet on her tactical display. Her own force had been reduced to less than 200 ships. Many of them were damaged. All of them were exhausted. The convoy of refugee transports waited behind her lines, helpless and vulnerable. "Admiral," Commander Brooks said, "the Korthax are hailing us. They demand our surrender." Patricia laughed. It was a tired laugh, but there was steel in it. "Tell them we decline." She turned to face her bridge crew. They were young and old, men and women, people from a dozen different worlds. They had followed her into the teeth of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. They had watched their friends die, and they were still here. "All ships," she said over the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Cole. The Korthax think they can break us. They think we will run. They are wrong." She straightened her shoulders and raised her voice. "We did not come all this way to fail. We did not sacrifice so much to turn back now. Behind us are 47,000 beings who showed kindness to our people when we needed it most. We will not abandon them. We will not surrender. We will fight." She pointed at the enemy fleet on the display. "All ships, full attack. Show them what humanity is made of." The Battle of Meridian Nebula lasted 14 hours. The humans charged directly into the Korthax formation, turning what the enemy had expected to be an easy victory into a close-quarters brawl. Ship fought ship at point-blank range. Boarding parties battled through corridors filled with smoke and fire. The nebula itself burned with the light of 1,000 explosions. The battleship Relentless led the charge. Admiral Cole stood on her bridge as enemy fire tore through her ship. When the forward weapons array was destroyed, she ordered her crew to use the ship itself as a weapon, ramming a Korthax battleship at full speed. The collision destroyed both vessels. Patricia Cole survived, barely. She was pulled from the wreckage by a rescue team and transferred to another ship. When she woke up in the medical bay, her first words were a question. Did the convoy escape? The answer was yes. The Korthax Grand Fleet had been shattered. Their supreme military commander was dead, his flagship broken in half by human weapons. Over 100 Korthax warships had been destroyed. The survivors retreated into deep space, their confidence in their own supremacy broken forever. Human losses were severe. 67 ships destroyed. Over 8,000 men and women dead. But the convoy of refugee transports had escaped. 47,000 Valori survivors were on their way to safety. They reached human space on a cold December morning. The first ships arrived at the colony of New Montana, the same world where the distress signal had been received months ago. Amy Peters, the communications officer who had first heard the Valori cry for help, was waiting at the spaceport when the transports landed. She watched as the refugees emerged into the sunlight. Many of them could barely walk. Their crystalline bodies were damaged and dull. But they were alive. They were free. Among them was Singing Crystal of Morning Tides. The Valori who had saved the Wandering Star 18 years ago was carried out of the transport on a stretcher. Its body had been partially repaired by human doctors, but it was still weak, still fragile, still close to death. Dr. Maya Collins was waiting for it. Maya had left military service years ago to study xenomedicine. She had spent her career learning everything humanity knew about alien biology, and she had specifically requested assignment to the refugee medical teams because she wanted to be there when the Valori arrived. "Morning tides," she said softly, kneeling beside the stretcher. "You probably do not remember me. I was on a ship called the Wandering Star a long time ago. You saved my life." The Valori's crystals flickered weakly. Light moved through its damaged body in slow waves. "I remember," it said. Its voice was barely a whisper. "The ship with the failing air. The humans who were so fragile but fought so hard to live." Maya felt tears on her cheeks. "We came back for you. All of us. The whole Federation. We came back for every last one of you. Why?" The question was the same one that Morning Tides had asked 18 years ago, when Daniel Harris had tried to thank it for saving his crew. Maya took a moment to collect herself. Then she answered, "Because you taught us something. You taught us that kindness matters. That helping others, even strangers, even when it costs you, is what makes life worth living." She paused and wiped her eyes. "We could not save everyone. Too many of your people died before we could reach them. But we saved everyone we could. And we will help you rebuild. However long it takes. Whatever it costs. We will not abandon you." Morning Tides was silent for a long moment. Then something that might have been laughter or tears passed through its crystalline body. "In all our 100,000 years of traveling the stars," it said, "we have never met a species like yours. You are so young, so fierce, so willing to fight and die for those you care about. When we saved your ship, we did not expect anything in return. We simply did what seemed right." "So did we," Maya replied. The Valori's crystals pulsed with light, brighter than before. "Then perhaps our people are not so different after all." In the months that followed, humanity offered the Valori a new home. The planet was called New Harmony, a beautiful world in a system that humans had claimed but never settled. The Valori accepted, and for the first time in 100,000 years, they stopped migrating. They built cities of crystal and light with human help. They planted gardens and raised their young in peace. They healed from the horrors they had suffered at the hands of the Korthax. And every year, on the anniversary of the day the human fleet arrived at Varth 9, both species gathered to remember. They remembered the 42 humans saved by aliens who expected nothing in return. They remembered the 47,000 Valori rescued by humans who refused to forget a kindness. They remembered the ships lost and the lives sacrificed. They remembered. And they taught their children to remember. Because in the cold darkness between stars, kindness was the most powerful force in the universe. One act of compassion could ripple outward for generations. One moment of grace could change the fate of worlds. The Valori had saved one human ship. Humanity had come back for every last one of them. And neither species would ever forget.